This happened a little over a year ago. I was 22 and just graduated. I took a summer job as a counselor at a camp by a lake. I thought it would be a great way to earn some money and gain experience. I heard odd rumors about the camp, but I didn't think much of them. I wish I had. The first night there, I was settling into my cabin. It was quiet, a little too quiet. I heard crickets and the wind, but then I heard something else. It was like branches snapping in the woods. I thought it was probably just deer or other animals. I shrugged it off and tried to sleep. As the weeks went by, strange things started happening. One day, I couldn't find the first aid kit. I figured someone borrowed it, but nobody admitted to it. Then I noticed strange markings at our campfire site. It looked like scratches on the ground. I thought maybe the kids were messing around. Still, it made me uneasy. I heard whispers among the campers. I didn't think much of it at first. Then one day, a kid went missing for a couple of hours. He said he saw a shadow that whispered to him. My stomach dropped. I didn't know what to do. We searched everywhere until he finally turned up, looking pale and shaken. I was worried, but I didn't know how to explain it. Things got worse. I started seeing shapes in the trees at night. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Whenever I turned my flashlight in a direction, something seemed to dart away. My heart raced as I heard another noise. It sounded like a call, almost human, but not quite. I told myself it was just fatigue, that I was overthinking things, but the air felt heavy, like something was pressing down. One night, I returned late from a staff meeting. The camp was darker than ever. I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. I walked to my cabin and stopped to listen. And then I heard it again. Whispers, soft and eerie. I turned toward the woods. Everything felt wrong. That's when I saw it. A shape stood just a few feet away, barely visible. My stomach dropped. I turned quickly, panic coursing through me. I shouted, trying to sound brave, "Who's there?" But nothing answered. I glanced back towards the spot, and there was nothing. I didn't know how long I stood frozen, but I felt like I was being watched. Even after I left the camp, those memories haunted me. It was 1 year later when I finally admitted the truth to myself. The shadows I saw weren't just my imagination. They felt alive, like something was waiting. I replayed those nights in my head, and I knew whatever was out there wasn't just a figment of my mind. I carried those whispers with me. I always wished I could forget, but deep down, I knew the camp wasn't finished with me. I tried to forget everything that happened at the camp. I really did. I moved on with my life, started a new job, and even made new friends. But then, last week, something changed. I received an email from the camp. It was a newsletter announcing the reopening of the camp for the summer. A knot twisted in my stomach as I read the words. I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that it was calling me back. I hoped to ignore it, but I couldn't. I opened the email again. It listed all the new activities they were planning to offer. But then something caught my eye. A special session titled Exploring the Unknown. My heart raced. What did that mean? My fingers itched to type a reply, to ask about what they were trying to do. But I stopped myself. I knew better than to dig deeper. Then, late one night, I heard a knock on my apartment door. It was odd, since my closest friend lived miles away. I opened the door cautiously. It was my old camp colleague, Mark. His face was pale, and his eyes held a wild fear that sent shivers down my spine. "We need to talk," his voice shaking. I invited him in, and we sat at my kitchen table. "I saw something," he started, his hands trembling as he wrapped them around a mug of coffee. I listened as he recounted his own experience after last summer, how he thought he had been seeing shadows too. "They're not just in the trees, you know. They follow you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could outrun it, but I was wrong. It watches from the dark, waiting for the right moment." My heart raced as he spoke. It was everything I had felt at the camp, every chilling whisper and fleeting shadow. Then he leaned in closer. I found something, and I'm afraid it's connected to those kids. They're resurfacing, the ones who heard the whispers. We have to go back. We have to know what really happened. I stared at him, disbelief flooding me. You want to return to that camp after everything? He nodded rigidly. I found details about the camp's history, a hidden folder. It talks about disappearances, about past counselors going mad. We need to uncover the truth. We have to face whatever is out there. An unease settled in my stomach. Part of me wanted to push this aside and never think about that place again. But another part, a small, dark part, was curious. The pull of the unknown was strong, and the more Mark spoke, the more my resolve wavered. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Mark looked me straight in the eye and whispered, "They know we're talking about them." Suddenly, my phone buzzed and I jumped. I frowned as I looked down. It was another email from the camp. Subject line, important. Updates on camp safety. As I clicked it open, chills ran through me. The last line read, "Join us for a session if you want to hear the truth. But beware, the woods remember." My hands trembled as I closed my laptop. Mark's words echoed in my mind. I knew then that whatever I thought I had left behind was coming back, and I had a feeling it was going to be worse than before. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me. Mark's revelation lingered like a thick fog, obscuring my thoughts. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, unable to concentrate on anything. My phone lay on the table, the screen glaring at me as if daring me to reach out to Mark and discuss our next steps. Finally, around noon, I caved. I texted Mark, asking if we could meet. When he replied almost instantly, suggesting the park near my place, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I arrived early, the warm sun making me sweat as I waited. Kids played on swings and parents chatted, seemingly oblivious to the darkness that occupied my mind. When Mark stomped into view, his face was taut with urgency. "We need to go over everything I found," he said without greeting. I nodded, leading him to a quieter area away from curious ears. I didn't want anyone overhearing us talk about shadows and whispers. We settled onto a bench, and Mark pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "This is the folder I mentioned. It's full of old camp records." His hand shook slightly as he handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully and scanned the pages. Most were unremarkable, the usual summer camp compliance forms and activity logs. But one page stood out, a list of names. "Who are these kids?" I asked, pointing to the names scrawled in faded ink. Mark leaned closer, his expression grave. "They were reported missing, but there are no records of what actually happened." I felt a chill run through me. The names felt familiar, echoes of those lost summers creeping back into my mind. They can't be connected to what happened last summer, can they? "I think they might be," Mark said, his voice low. "I remembered that one of our campers last year had nightmares about finding something in the woods. His mother pulled him out halfway through the session. What if the whispers he heard were just like the others?" Before I could respond, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure stood at the edge of the playground, just beyond the trees. A girl, her hair long and tangled, staring straight at me. I gasped, my heart racing again. "Do you see her?" I whispered to Mark. He turned, looking toward the trees, but by the time he looked back, the girl was gone. What the hell? I just saw her. The image of her haunted me as my mind raced. "Do you think it was one of them?" Mark swallowed hard. "Maybe it's a sign. They want us to come back." I shook my head, feeling panic rise. "That's insane. We shouldn't be talking about this. We can't just—" The sound of rustling leaves cut me off. My stomach dropped as I turned to find the girl standing nearer now, her eyes wide and pleading. "You have to listen," she whispered, her voice carried by the wind. I blinked and she was gone again, replaced by shadows that flickered among the trees. "Mark, we need to get out of here," I said, my voice trembling. As we stood to leave, I spotted it again, an old wooden sign half hidden by undergrowth. I stumbled closer, breath hitching in my throat. The words were barely legible, chipping away with time. "Welcome to Camp Silver Pines." Then everything went dark. I gasped as the world came rushing back, a jolt of color and sound that blurred everything for a moment. I blinked against the bright sunlight, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The park was still there, but everything felt different now, uneasy. I turned to Mark. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "See what?" he frowned. "What just happened?" "I don't know. It was like a blackout," I replied, clutching my head. "One moment I was looking at the sign and then nothing." Mark looked around, scanning the park as if expecting something to jump out at us. "Maybe you just fainted," he said, though his voice didn't carry much conviction. "No," I insisted. "I saw the girl, and then—" I stopped short, unable to articulate the feeling of being pulled away from reality. Before I could dwell on it, a loud crash echoed from the nearby trees. I jumped, instinctively moving closer to Mark. "What was that?" "I don't know, but we should check it out," he said, despite the uncertainty in his voice. With trembling nerves, we cautiously walked toward the sound. I could hear my heartbeat escalate as we neared the trees. The rustling intensified, and a guttural noise emerged, a mix between a growl and a whimper. My throat went dry. "Do you think it's—" Mark's voice trailed off. "I don't want to find out," I whispered. But part of me was already leaning toward the noise, drawn by an unexplainable curiosity. As we moved closer, the underbrush parted, revealing a small clearing. There, tangled in roots and leaves, was an old backpack. It looked familiar, like one from the camp. My heart raced as I rushed over, hoping to find a clue or something that would explain the girl's appearance. When I unzipped it, a thick smell of mildew rolled out. Inside, I found remnants of what used to be. A few crumpled snack wrappers, a water bottle long gone stale, and at the very bottom, a diary. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The cover cracked.
"Read it!" Mark urged, peering over my shoulder. I opened the diary to yellowed pages filled with messy handwriting. "It's just a kid's thoughts," I mumbled. But then I read a line that made my stomach drop. "I keep hearing whispers at night. They want me to find them." "What?" Mark whispered, his eyes wide. "Can I see?" As he flipped through the pages, I scanned the area again, half expecting the girl to appear. But instead, I sensed another presence. Something watched us from the shadows, lurking behind the trees. "Do you feel that?" I asked softly, my skin prickling. Mark nodded, terror etched on his face. "We need to go." Just then, the air shifted. A chill swept through the clearing, as if the world held its breath. Our hearts raced in sync as we turned to run, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been following us now moved closer. As we dashed toward the park, I glanced back, heart pounding in my chest. The trees stood silent, but I knew something had awakened in the woods, something tied to Camp Silver Pines. Before we could escape the edge of the trees completely, a branch snapped behind us, and a shadow lunged. "Run!" Mark shouted, pulling me along. That's when I heard her voice again, echoing faintly through the air. "You have to listen." The urgency in her tone sent a shock down my spine. I didn't want to go back, but I knew we didn't have a choice. My feet pounded against the pavement as we burst from the tree line. I could barely keep up with Mark, but fear propelled me forward. The park's open space felt like a refuge, but I knew better than to think we were safe. "What was that?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. I don't know," Mark panted, "but we can't stick around to find out." We crossed through the grassy area, the lush green stretching out before us, so innocuous, yet laced with shadows of dread. I glanced over my shoulder, half hoping to see if whatever chased us was still lurking in the trees. But no, nothing moved, only the sway of branches in the wind. "Should we call someone?" I suggested, despite wanting to avoid drawing attention to us. I didn't even know what we would say. Mark shook his head vigorously. "No, nobody will believe us, not after what just happened." His face was pale, and I understood why. How could we explain the girl, the whispers, the sensation of being watched? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure I wanted to find them. "Let's just go home," I said, my voice trembling. I worried about my own sanity. Maybe it had all been a weird, collective hallucination. "Yeah, home. Definitely home," Mark replied, but he didn't sound convinced. We trudged toward the parking lot, each step heavy with unsaid words and unprocessed fears. My heart still raced as memories from earlier clawed at me. I pulled the diary from my backpack and clutched it tightly. I couldn't shake the image of those last words. "They want me to find them." Just as we reached the car, a rustle caught my attention. I turned, scanning the park, and spotted a figure standing under a nearby tree. It was a girl, someone with messy hair and a worn-out dress, the same one I thought I'd seen earlier. "Wait," I whispered, tugging at Mark's sleeve as we stopped, frozen in place. "Who is she?" Mark asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I think it's her," I whispered back, but my heart sank at the sight of her sad eyes. She looked so lost. "Why does this keep happening?" Mark mumbled. "What does she want?" I took a step closer, completely unaware of how reckless it was. "You have to listen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow clear. "You need to help me." Mark glanced at me, eyes wide with fear. Is she real? I didn't know. It felt like a dream that had gone too far. "What do you want?" I found myself asking, though I was terrified of the answer. She pointed deeper into the park, her finger shaking. "Find him. He's waiting." Then a wave of shadows swept over the area, as if nightfall had crashed in on us. I felt a pull in my gut, a need to follow her. But Mark grabbed my arm. "No, we can't go back." Before I could respond, a loud snap echoed again from the trees, followed by an unsettling rustle. I caught fleeting glimpses of movement among the branches, and a sense of dread draped itself over us. "Something's out there," I breathed, my heart racing at the sudden shift in atmosphere. The girl's expression changed, fear replacing whatever spark of hope she had held. "You have to help me," she cried once more, her voice growing distant. And just like that, she was gone, vanished behind the trees. All that was left was the darkening sky and the uncertainty filling the air. I turned to Mark, panic surging through me. What do we do now? I had a feeling this was only the beginning. My breath caught in my throat as I processed the scene around us. The dark trees loomed like sentinels, turning the park's familiar landscape into a maze of shadows. I could almost hear the whispers again, chilling me to the bone. I couldn't shake the thought that whatever lingered in those woods was more than just a figment of our imagination. "Let's just get in the car," I said, pulling Mark toward the driver's side. I needed to get away from here, to feel the safety of enclosed space. "Wait!" Mark seized my wrist. "What if we're supposed to help her? What if she's in danger?" I shook my head, and anger mixed with fear bubbled to the surface. "We can't help her if we're dead!"
My voice trembled, but the urgency in his expression made me hesitate. What if she's not just a girl? What if she's a ghost or something? He suggested, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. He gazed back towards the trees, as if expecting her to reappear. Or maybe she's a trap, I countered, glancing nervously around the parking lot. I didn't want to linger. The memories of the past couple of hours surged back in waves, and I felt nauseated by it all. For all we know, whatever was watching us is still out there. Mark was quiet for a moment, his expression conflicted. I could see he was battling the same fears, trying to come up with answers. But she told you to find him. What if that's the key? I shook my head vehemently, panic rising again. We can't. We don't even know who he is. Just then, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. I fished it out and saw a text from my older sister. Hey, saw some weird stuff in the woods today. Call me. Read it, Mark urged, peering over my shoulder. I showed him the text, and his eyes widened. That's strange, he murmured. What could she have seen? Maybe it was a coincidence, but I didn't believe in them anymore. I felt like we were all tangled in something much larger than us. She should have stayed away from there, I muttered. No one should go into those woods. Without thinking, I typed out a quick response. What did you see? I hit send and glanced back towards the trees, half expecting the girl to show up again. Mark leaned against the car, clearly hesitant about what to do next. I think we should go find your sister. If she saw something, maybe it's connected. My heart raced at the thought, but the adrenaline surged again. Okay, let's go. My voice gained strength as I opened the car door, scanning the lot carefully. Just as my hand touched the steering wheel, a loud thud echoed from somewhere in the park. It felt close, too close. We both froze. Did you hear that? Mark whispered, eyes wide. Before I could answer, another thud sounded, and then it came. The unmistakable sound of footsteps. Something was moving in the shadows, and it was not just the wind. Get in the car, I shouted, scrambling toward the driver's side. But as I dove into the seat, I caught a glimpse of something darting between the trees. It was tall and dark, and it moved with purpose. Fear twisted in my gut. We need to go now, I yelled, fumbling with the keys, feeling desperate. Whatever was in the woods wouldn't wait for us. That's when I saw it, a flash of white fabric against the dark bark, the same worn-out dress the girl had worn. My heart dropped as the realization hit me. She wasn't the only one waiting for help. The shadows thickened around us as I gripped the steering wheel, my heart hammering in my chest. Mark was fumbling with the door handle, his face pale. What was that? He asked, eyes darting towards the trees. I don't know, but we need to leave, I shot back, glancing toward the shadow that had caught my attention. The edges of fear were beginning to fray my thoughts, and I felt urgency clawing at me. Finally, Mark jumped into the seat beside me, and I twisted the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, but my hands trembled as I tried to steady the car. Which way? I asked, my voice shaking. Just get us out of here. Go toward the entrance, he urged, pointing toward the darkened path ahead. I floored it, the tires screeching as I pulled out of the parking lot. As we sped along the twisted roads, I stole one last glance at the woods. Nothing moved, but I had the feeling of being watched, like 1,000 unseen eyes were boring into my back. Did you see her? Mark asked, voice barely above a whisper. Yes, or at least I think I did, I admitted. But we don't know what that means. What if it was not just her? What if... I couldn't bring myself to finish. What if there are more? He supplied, the fear evident in his tone. I nodded slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes as we drove, the headlights casting fleeting beams of light across the road ahead. I took comfort in the familiarity of our surroundings. The town looked peaceful, but I knew that wasn't the full story.
The woods held secrets I didn't want to uncover. "Your sister," Mark said, abruptly, breaking the tense silence. "Did she text back?" I quickly grabbed my phone from the center console. There was a new message waiting for me. I opened it and read, my heart sinking. I saw something like a girl. She was not alone. There are others with her. You need to come now. "Not alone?" Mark echoed, that knot of fear tightening in my chest even further. What do you think she meant? Before I could answer, the car lurched to the side as something heavy hit the back of us. I slammed on the brakes, my pulse racing. "What was that?" Mark shouted. I peered through the rearview mirror, and my breath hitched. Something tall and dark stood in the road, a shapeless mass with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. "I don't know," I gasped, "but I think it's coming for us." The air felt thick, and panic surged in me as I put the car in reverse. I needed to get away from whatever that was. But before I could even begin to back up, the figure darted forward, covering ground too fast to comprehend. Suddenly, everything went dark. The lights cut off. Out, the engine sputtered, and the car rolled to a stop. "Now what?" Mark's voice was barely audible, rising above the suffocating silence that surrounded us. "I have no idea," I whispered, dread settling deep within me as I realized we were trapped. Whatever had watched us from the woods was now right outside, waiting for its chance. Cold air flooded the car, creeping in through the cracks. I could hardly breathe as I stared into the darkness outside. Whatever it was watching us. My fingers trembled on the steering wheel, unwilling to break the silence that felt like a thick blanket over us. "Do you think it's gone?" Mark asked, straining to listen. "I don't know." My voice was barely a whisper. I forced myself to look at my phone again. No signal. "We're stuck here." "Great," Mark muttered, shifting in his seat. His eyes darted to the back of the car. Just then, a loud thud echoed from behind. I jumped, the sound reverberating through the stillness. "What was that?" I breathed in a panic, inching away from the window. A shape slid into view, momentarily illuminated by the dim glow of my dashboard lights. It was slender, almost human-like, but twisted in its form. I turned off the headlights, fear seeping into my bones. "Turn around," I urged Mark. "We need to check." "No way. We have to get out of here," he said, his eyes wide with terror. Before I could respond, the figure moved again, disappearing into the shadows. There was a loud scrape against the back of the car, causing the metal to groan. I swallowed hard, the reality of our situation dawning on me. "We can't just sit here," I muttered, unwilling to act like a sitting duck. I shifted the gear into park. "We need to look." "I can't believe you want to do this," Mark's voice quivered. I rolled down my window just an inch, trying to listen for any signs of movement outside. The forest was eerily silent. I glanced at the only other road that veered off into the woods. My sister's text popped back into my mind. What did she see? What was with the girl? "Do you think that thing is connected?" I asked, heart pounding. "Let's just go," he urged softly. "Back to the camp." "No, wait." But before I even finished, the breath was knocked from me as something slammed against the driver's side. I jerked back, eyes widening as I saw two glowing eyes lock onto mine. "Go, now," Mark shouted, panic lacing his voice. I didn't think, I reacted. With hands shaking, I slammed down on the gas pedal. We shot forward, the car lurching violently as the dark mass drifted back into the shadows. The engine sputtered, then roared back to life, though its strength felt unreliable. I focused, desperate to reach any sort of safety. "Please don't let this thing follow us," I prayed, glancing at the rearview mirror. Suddenly, the headlights lit up a flash of movement. "There!" Mark gasped, pointing as we sped further away from the woods. I didn't want to look. I couldn't afford to take my eyes off the road ahead. But when the car bucked again, something small and dark collided with the back window, a fleeting silhouette distorted against the glass. "Not again!" I screamed, gripping the wheel tighter. I glanced back. For a second, the dark outline pressed against the rear window, its features indistinct but clear enough for dread to coil in my stomach. Then everything went dark again. The road vanished into a wall of night. The car lost speed and began to stall. "Come on! Come on!" I yelled at the engine, my voice echoing in the small space. That's when I saw it, clearer than before. A twisted figure shifting through the trees, moving in tandem with us. And I realized we weren't just being chased. We were surrounded. Panic surged through me as I slammed the gas pedal harder. The engine stuttered in protest, but I was desperate. We had to get away from whatever was stalking us. My mind raced with questions. How many were there? What did they want? "We need to get off the road," Mark shouted, his voice thick with fear. "Turn down that path." I hesitated, my instincts screaming against it, but I didn't want to argue. I jerked the wheel, veering onto the rutted trail that twisted deeper into the woods. Branches whipped against the car, a cacophony of noise that smothered my thoughts. What if there's no way out? I wondered aloud, gripping the wheel with enough force to numb my fingers. "There has to be," he replied, every word a plea. The headlights cast long shadows, dancing on the trees. I could still feel those eyes watching. I could almost hear them whispering in the rustle of leaves. Each bump in the road sent jolts of fear through my stomach. I fought against the urge to look back, terrified of what I might see. "Do you think they're in the woods?" I whispered, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I just want to get back to camp," Mark shouted. "You have to drive faster." The engine whined under the strain, and I could hear the grinding of the gears as I pushed it to its limits. Then it happened. A loud crack echoed from behind us, like a tree snapping in half. I flinched, stealing a glance in the mirror. There it was again, a fleeting shadow, lurching through the underbrush, moving closer. I swear it's right behind us. I felt the heat of terror crawling up my neck. That's when we hit something. The car jolted violently. I could already feel the wheels slipping on mud. Panic surged as I wrestled the steering wheel, trying to keep us steady. "Are you okay?" Mark gasped, his face pale. "I'm fine," I snapped. "Just hang on." The headlights flickered and faded for a moment, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced. I fumbled for the high beams, praying the extra light would scare whatever was lurking back. When they finally blared back to life, a quick glimpse behind us made me yelp. It was there, that twisted figure. Its face was no longer an unseen mystery. Hollow eyes stared back, lips stretched in a grotesque grin. My breath hitched in my throat. The creature clawed at the ground as it chased us, a frantic dance that was far too unnatural. I gritted my teeth, prodding the gas pedal even harder. Just as I thought we might gain some ground, the engine sputtered again. We were losing momentum. "Don't stop," Mark urged, his voice raw with panic. "Please, not now." Then I saw it, a faint glow up ahead. A cabin, its window panes reflecting the pale moonlight. My heart raced again, this time with a flicker of hope. Maybe there were people inside. Maybe we could find safety. "Hold on," I shouted, swerving toward the cabin. But as I did, another thudding slam reverberated through the car. This time, it shook the entire vehicle. I felt the grip of dread tighten around my throat as I raced toward the door. We needed to get inside fast, before whatever that thing was caught up to us. That's when the car jolted one last time and rolled to a stop. The engine died, silence crashing in like a wave. I turned to Mark, but he was already looking out the window. "We're not alone," he whispered, his face drained of color. As I followed his gaze, I froze. There, in the clearing beyond the cabin, figures were emerging from the shadows. They were watching us, and their eyes glowed. I couldn't breathe as I stared at the figures that emerged from the trees. Their hollow eyes flickered in the moonlight, each one a void that seemed to draw in what little warmth remained in the air. I felt like a deer caught in the headlights, paralyzed by fear. "What do we do?" I rasped, my voice barely audible. "Get out of the car!" Mark shouted, urgency electrifying his tone. "We have to find shelter." As if in a trance, I opened the door and stumbled onto the ground, cold stone meeting my feet like a slap. The air was thick with dread, each second stretching into eternity. The figures began to move toward us, gliding silently, their forms shifting and warping in ways I couldn't quite grasp. I grasped Mark's arm as he leaned away from the car, pulling him toward the frail embrace of the cabin. Inside, the air was stale but familiar. I felt my heart racing as I slammed the door behind us, locking it defensively, though I wasn't sure how much good it would do against whatever lingered outside. "What now?" Mark asked, scanning the darkened interior, the panic in his voice echoing through the room. Before I could answer, a thud reverberated against the door, making me jump. The cabin creaked ominously, and the darkness felt almost alive, thrumming with an energy I couldn't understand. "They're out there," I whispered hesitantly, feeling the shadows draw in closer. Mark pressed against the window, peeking through the dirty glass. "Can you see them?" he asked, his voice trembling. I joined him, the murky night obscuring my view. Just beyond the threshold of the clearing, I could make out the figures swaying slightly, their dark forms almost vaporous, as if reality itself struggled to contain them. My heart sank. What do they want? "I don't think it matters," Mark said, backing away from the window. "We need to figure out how to get out of here." "I don't want to go out there," I protested. A wave of hopelessness gripped me. "They're watching us. They want something." "There has to be a reason," Mark pressed, pacing the cabin with an energy fueled by desperation. "If they need help, what if it has to do with the girl?" I shuddered at the memory. "What girl? The one who spoke to us? We can't trust any of them." Mark stopped, suddenly serious. "But what if we don't have a choice?" His words echoed in my mind, reverberating through my anxiety. I felt a pull, a gnawing curiosity that begged to know more. "We have to find a way to communicate with them," I murmured, though my instinct told me it was a terrible idea. He blinked, uncertainty flickering across his face. "How? Maybe if we can show we're not a threat." I could hardly believe I was suggesting this, but a part of me thought we couldn't remain in this cabin forever. Mark nodded slowly, as though weighing the options. "All right, I'll try to distract them. You find something to signal with." I glanced around the cabin, my senses sharpening. Rummaging through the dusty drawers and cupboards, I came across a candle and a couple of matches. It was a flimsy idea, but it could serve as a signal, if they were curious enough. Everything felt like a countdown to some unknown end as Mark quietly moved to the window. "Here goes nothing," he murmured as he cracked open the door just slightly. A soft, almost musical rustle swept through the air, and I felt my heartbeat quicken as Mark raised his hand in a slow wave. I held my breath as the figure shifted, their movements seemingly hesitant at first, starting to gather into a tighter formation. "Come on," I whispered, lighting the candle and placing it in the window, the waning flame flickering like an anxious heartbeat. Was it working? Doubts filled my mind until I saw them inch closer, shadows bending beyond the threshold into the faint light. "Show yourself," Mark said louder now, his voice more certain. "We want to listen." But the figure stayed just out of reach, lingering like a breath away from visibility. Then I noticed one larger figure edged out. From behind the others, a girl about our age, her hair streaming like dark vines, her face clear and crystalline in the dim light. I gasped, heart in my throat. "It's her," I stammered. "Do you know her?" Mark asked, concern etched deep into his features. "I think she is one of the ones from before, the one at the park." And just like that, she stepped forward, aglow in the candlelight. "You have to listen," she whispered, her voice a delicate hum blending with the whisper of the wind. "You are meant to be here." "What do you want?" I asked, shaking. There was a flicker of sadness in her gaze. "Find him. You must help him." "Who?" Mark pressed, his voice shaking. Before she could respond, movement rippled through the gathered figures, a swell of murmur echoing in the air. A rustling sounded from behind me, gripping my spine with fear. The shadowy forms began to swirl, melding into a chaotic dance around the cabin, closing in like a tempest. "No, no," I gasped, fear gripping my heart. The candle flickered dangerously low, casting stretched shadows that morphed into a maze of terror. As the girl continued to plead, "Please, you must help him." "Who?" Mark pressed, his voice shaking. Before she could respond, movement rippled through the gathered figures, a swell of murmur echoing in the air. A rustling sounded from behind me, gripping my spine with fear. The shadowy forms began to swirl, melding into a chaotic dance around the cabin, closing in like a tempest. "No, no," I gasped, fear gripping my heart. The candle flickered dangerously low, casting stretched shadows that morphed into a maze of terror. As the girl continued to plead, "Please, you must help him," my surroundings began to blur, echoes of laughter mingling with cries of distress. Mark's grip tightened around my arm. "What's happening?" I stumbled back as the girl's form crumpled into darkness, her arms reaching out toward us, even as the walls of the cabin throbbed and pulsed. "You have to come." The world around me began to fracture, and the shadows rushed in, swirling and melding together until all I could hear was the cacophony of voices calling for us, echoes of the lost wanting to be found. And then, nothing. I gasped as I opened my eyes, the sounds gone. The shadows had receded, leaving only the candle flickering weakly. Mark was still next to me, eyes wide and fearful. "What just happened?" he whispered. "I don't know," I replied, struggling to piece together the fragments of the encounter. "But we're not alone in this. It's all connected. I can feel it." "Do you think they are still out there?" "I don't know," I murmured, through my thoughts clouded with uncertainty. "We have to find the truth about him, but I still don't know how." As uncertainty hung in the air, I felt a chill creeping down my spine. The shadows held the whispers and secrets of what was left undone, and deep down, I knew we were just beginning to uncover what lay hidden among them. And as the last light flickered out, leaving us again in darkness, the questions loomed larger than even the shadows themselves.